Hi everyone. We are going to be discussing today how real-time engagement drives retention in gaming and virtual spaces. We'll do a little bit around introductions. We'll introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about Agora, talk a little bit about what real-time engagement is and what it means to us. And then we will look at the opportunities and challenges from the point of view of the different kinds of game spaces that we've identified, from asynchronous games to asynchronous games to real-time simulations. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So very quickly though, before we talk about Agora, I'm Pat Finlayson. I'm a product marketing manager at Agora. I am also a gamer by nature. If you couldn't tell, I support the Horde. I play World of Warcraft a lot. And John also obviously is a gamer. And Jonna is the more technical of us. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Jonna.
Oh, for sure. My name's Jonah. I've been working in games for coming up on a decade now. Everything from publishing, production, development, from PC games to mixed reality. And so, I'm just a big old nerd about it. I specifically love adventure games, getting lost in virtual worlds, and then just kind of letting my mind wander as I explore. So very much looking forward to this nerd out session as we kind of talk about games and stuff.
So yeah, I think we're quite alike because we both play a wide variety of games. So everything from, I think, Pokemon Go to Magic the Gathering to World of Warcraft to Fortnite, whatever. So yeah, anyway, about Agora. So Agora was founded in 2014, and our mission, if you like, our mission statement is to make real-time engagement ubiquitous. So what that means is to allow everybody to communicate naturally and interact with them anytime, anywhere, anyhow. So no matter what device you're on, no matter where you are in the world, to have that natural conversation with somebody without lag, without jitter, without any degradation in quality of audio or video, for instance. We have a lot of data centers spread across the world. We have customers in nearly 200 now regions and countries. We average 60 billion minutes of usage per month, so quite a substantial base. And then we are NASDAQ listed under API. So, we make real-time engagement ubiquitous, allowing everyone to interact with anyone, anytime, anywhere. So what does that actually mean? So as I was saying, it's about that real-time engagement. It's about context. So it's having that immersive type of experience so that people interact with one another in a shared digital environment, but it's like you're in the same room as that person. So you're having a shared experience. And then also that interactivity should be able to be scalable. So we make sure that everything that we do is scalable, from the one-to-one type conversations, one to few, many to many, millions, few to millions, all based on our SDN RTM network, which is low latency global network. So it's a software defined real-time network, basically. And that allows us to offer a really great quality of experience, quality of service. And then the ubiquity piece comes in. We have the widest device and platform support, just to make sure that no matter what platform, what device you're on, you can communicate with anybody else, no matter what device, no matter what platform they're using. Did you want to add to that, John, or have I covered it?
No, I think that what I would emphasize is the ubiquity aspect of it. And as we get deeper into the conversation, I think that will be quite relevant, especially as we look toward the future of games and where things go.
Absolutely, yeah. Oops. We deliver the 60 billion minutes per month of this real-time social engagement around the world with our software-defined real-time network. So that, as John was saying, it's cross-platform. So it's mobile, web, desktop applications. We have this network of data centers across the world, and we've built ourselves on being a trusted partner to make sure that we deliver a quality of service, a quality of experience in a secure fashion to all of our customers throughout the world. So with that, what's so special about real-time engagement? Well, actually, this interactivity creates a great level of engagement. As we all know that there are different levels of engagement depending on what kind of game you play, and Jonna will go through that in a bit more detail in a bit. But actually that engagement allows you to monetize, allows you to reward your players with giving them the ability to buy really cool stuff, whether that be emoticons or whether it be in-game money or vouchers to go and buy the latest outfit for your Pokemon or whatever. So it's that kind of thing. It's about driving monetization at the end of the day. So, John, over to you.
Yeah, for sure. Here I'll take over. I think just kind of picking up on the monetization piece is, different kinds of games are going to have different monetization models. So kind of taking a broader look at it is how does engagement help support the monetization models of various games? And just to kind of give a little bit of perspective, especially as we focus today's conversation, looking at the gaming industry as a whole, mobile games, PC games, console games, all together are going to be coming up on just about $200 billion in 2022 alone. That's just roughly the size of the market, right? So if you're out there, if you're developing a game, producing a game, just being part of the game industry itself, what does it look like to take a piece of that pie, essentially, right? That's what we'll be looking at. To give it a bit more context on that is, at Agora, we are a global company. Like you mentioned, we're distributed across 100 countries. So it's not just about looking at one specific market, but rather just players all over the world. How are they behaving, and what are the kinds of virtual spaces that they engage in, right? We're talking about by 2025, this is going to be right around 3.5 billion people that are playing games. And it's very diverse. There's all kinds of interests and ways that people actually want to engage with games. Games mean different things to different people, right? And as we'll see, we have to segment those kinds of interactions in different ways. RTE, real-time engagement, will mean different things. Now, on that note, though, and this will definitely color some of our focus, especially early on in the conversation, is a little bit over half of that is just primarily mobile gamers. And that's just for technology. There's accessibility to digital devices across the world. Some parts of the world have access to, lots of different kinds of PCs and consoles, but in other parts of the world, gaming has really taken off because of the access that we have to mobile games, which definitely influences the way in which the industry can advance. And then on that note, one metric that we'll keep coming back to that is quite relevant to real-time engagement is stickiness. It's daily average users divided by monthly average users. We're taking this benchmark that's proposed by Game Analytics, an analytics provider. That is, if you have a stickiness of between 10 and 18%, you're doing okay. You're doing pretty good. So we just want to benchmark that so that as we go along, we'll see a couple of examples that we're able to see, well, how has real-time engagement helped them reach that level of stickiness, right? To linger on that for a second, the reason why stickiness matters is, and particularly in mobile games, is free-to-play business model essentially depends on, we're here for quite a while. A game that's doing middlingly okay might have 3 to 5 minute average sessions. 20-minute session lengths are wow, you're doing great. Let's say that you're doing an AR game, you can expect quite a bit, quite short, but a bit shorter than that. So what we really want to think about is, players keep coming back. The game is sticky. They keep returning to the game. It becomes part of just the gaming habit for that person. Well, one person chooses to play a game, they come back to it every day, and within that, they become part of the monetization cycle for that particular game, right? So that's why we want to benchmark this on stickiness. So moving forward, as we go along with this conversation, we're going to touch upon use cases that are relevant to the following solutions: voice chat, of course, video chat, text messaging, typing in the game, or reactions even, emotes, live audio video streaming. We'll touch on that a little bit. Of course, multi-party and screen sharing, which as we progress through the conversation, each of these will become relevant in different ways. The reason why we want to highlight this, though, of course, is not each of these is appropriate for any given situation, right? So we do kind of have to understand how to segment those. We don't want to insert video chat in the middle of something that is, I don't know. You wouldn't want to be looking directly at your opponents in the middle of a League of Legends match, for example. That would be distracting and probably lead to FPS issues, right? So we don't want that. So on that note, here's kind of how we're gonna structure this conversation a little bit. This is just a model that we've been kind of using here at Agora to just try to understand. Whenever we encounter a game developer or game creator, and we try to understand, hey, what are you building, and how can we really truly help you achieve success and increase your stickiness? We first kind of have to understand, well, how real time is your game actually? Real time engagement is our interactions as people as we're hanging out, but like the game itself, right? We can look at, like, if we're just kind of playing cards, that's not real time really. I could play my turn and then leave, and the game loop isn't truly affected by that. So with that we would consider a less real-time game over on the left side of the spectrum. And then when we're looking at something just more like, you know, like World of Warcraft, or again going back to a MOBA or an FPS, well, that's very real-time. If you get up and leave, like, you know, you'll lose probably.
You get lynched.
exactly. Like that wouldn't be very good. And along the way, with like there's sort of like stuff in the middle, you know. There's games where like, yeah, they do take place in real time, or but like it's on a timer. But like, reasonably speaking, even if we talk about the way that the data transfers work, it is this client sends data to this client, and then it renders the results and it sends it back. You might argue that that's technically just how it works in general. But the more we close that gap, the more we have this perception that it's all happening as it happens in the real world, right? Real time. Then on the y-axis, we have how social is the game. And for this, we kind of want to talk about like the game loop. How much does it depend on this being a social thing, right? And so there are some games that you could reasonably just play by yourself. There's plenty of people that will hop into any online multiplayer game and just never hang out with anybody. They're just grinding on their own. And then there's games that like really don't make sense if you don't have other people. Like you can't really play Among Us by yourself, right? So that's what the social axis is here. You want to highlight that, yes, technically there is something like that y-axis will go below the x-axis, but that would be irrelevant to this conversation. So, you know, just know that, yeah, you could reasonably map like Final Fantasy at the bottom there, not Final Fantasy 14, right? But like any of the single player games, but that's not this conversation. So, let's move forward. So the first topic we'll talk about is asynchronous games. So here we're going to populate just the left side of here. This just kind of refers to like just for us to give a few examples of games that have this like asynchronous aspect of it. And again, the here is asynchronous games connect players through competition but don't require them to play simultaneously. Again, reasonably the game loop is not affected if we're not happening at the same time exactly, right? I think a really great example is Magic. Magic is a card game.
Magic, yeah.
Yes, right. You can play it fine, and now you have the online version.
Yeah, you can put the online version, but the thing about Magic though is it's great, but you don't actually know who you're playing against necessarily. So from a social aspect, you play your turn, they play their turn, you play your turn. You don't really, it's not really as social as other games in that sense. So it's great, and it's very good from getting the grey cells working, because obviously you have to understand how those cards stack. But, you know, and because in that scenario, I'm guessing, you know, video doesn't make any sense because you're not going to see the people that you're dealing with, and it's a card game. So you're not really going to interact very much with them in that sense, which is a bit different, I guess, from Poker Face. Because poker needs... Yeah,
go ahead. Apologies.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, because with playing poker, a lot of the game is actually gauging your opponent's reactions, and even on video, there must be tells as well. So I'm assuming that's kind of why video is probably really important for Poker Face. But yeah,
it's something like that. And actually, I wanted to ask you, like, as you play Magic, do you play the card? Like just the offline version, like the traditional Magic?
I play the offline version as well, yes.
Oh, okay. So how has that been different, playing online versus offline for you?
Well, because offline I play with friends and family, and it's a really social engaged time, you know, because we have a lot of fun and laugh, and it's a really nice kind of environment. Online, it's very cold. You play your turn, they play their turn, you play your turn. So there's no engagement, there's no real humanity with that, you see what I'm saying? Because you even with the offline version, you can actually gauge if somebody's got really good hands. You know, generally, if I'm playing with my daughter, for instance, I know what her tell is, I can tell. The next card she puts down is going to kill me, you know, because she's got a really good hand, I can tell. Playing the online version, I don't have that. I have no idea. I've got no tells. So it's that real-time bit, that engagement, and understanding what your opponent is going to do next. It's that prediction.
That's very interesting. I've had the same experience playing a Hearthstone. Yeah, it's just like, I know that the little avatars will speak to each other, and then you can leave messages and reactions. But I don't know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Demolished. Yeah, no, I think that's very interesting, and I think that's why as we position logos, game logos on this graph, it's first of all non-comprehensive, and also logos have a certain size, so the relativity of them is just more illustrative than it is 100% accurate. But I do think that's interesting to position Magic the Gathering Arena a little bit lower, right? To your point, being able to see your opponent would probably matter more in like a tournament.
Yes,
we're in an ELO based ranked match, and I want to find your tells. I've studied you. You are my opponent, or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're just kind of casually playing by yourself at home.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand. I guess to give a bit more context on Poker Face. Poker Face, we'll speak about them a bit more at length here in a minute. But yeah, precisely, it's a poker app, of course, and then you can see everybody's faces. Bunch is similar. It's this sort of online game platform where everybody can hang out and socialize. I won't linger on them too much because we have a bit more context on how they work. But it is worth noting that as they are increasingly social, the game itself is not where the real-time engagement is happening. Is what's going on around it, right? And I think that's the takeaway that I'd like to highlight about this grouping of games. It's the game loop doesn't have the real-time engagement aspect of it, but as we create a social hangout around it, we can build real-time engagement solutions around it. I did want to highlight over on the left, Game Pigeon. This has been an interesting trend that's been coming up. iMessage games. Are you familiar with this concept? It's something that has recently come onto my radar. But Game Pigeon, you download the app and then you play it in iMessage, or like on your phone. So like we can start a text messaging back and forth, and then that the game is within it. So very asynchronous. Every text message is a move. We go back and forth like this. So that of course is about as asynchronous as it can get. It's I'm literally sending a pigeon back and forth, or virtually. I also, in the least social, still kind of social. Best Fiend Stars, I think, is kind of an interesting example. It kind of harkens back to sort of like the modern iteration of these like old now Zynga Facebook games, right? Where you would play your turn, farm bill and the like, or any kind of match 3 scenario. Best Fiends is a match 3 game, and you would be able to post about it online or like do campaigns with your friends, but you're not really playing together. You're just more like asynchronously collaborating towards a shared goal so you can reap all the rewards, right? So I think that's ultimately that's where we're at with asynchronous games, how we're defining them. And I want to give a couple of examples of the ways in which real-time engagement can help in these games. I think here's a really good example. Communix is the developers of Poker Face. And what they've done is they have a regular poker app, but in order to compete, they've added the voice chat. Everybody can see each other, and like you were saying, it's you can see people's faces, you can talk to each other. That adds to there's the core game mechanics, but then there's this like extra layer around it. When I first ran into this, I was like, how much could that reasonably matter? Because again, Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering Arena, you don't really do that. So I started browsing the App Store reviews and just trying to understand, like, well, what are people saying about this? I ran into this. This is just like a random person saying, at first I thought video chat poker wouldn't be any different than any other poker app. I thought that the addition of the faces wouldn't change the feel of a normal online experience. I'm happy to say that I could not have been more wrong. It is a completely different skill curve when you can see and hear your opponents and they can see and hear you. And then they give the game a 5 stars, right? And you just scroll through the App Store reviews. There's plenty of that. I think that's very interesting for Communix, and they've been very successful with Poker Face. I think that's kind of worth highlighting. I also want to highlight something that kind of arises from this is there's interesting monetization opportunities that kind of empower the fun. Voice filters, AR face masks, virtual gifting for each other as we hang out and play with each other. So by enabling these solutions, they've also opened up a new set of in-app purchases that enable the fun. And also privacy features. You're playing with a bunch of strangers and you don't want them to see you, but you want to participate, voice filters, etc. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there that has arisen from this. Other example is, as we're talking about Bunch, I think like we mentioned, Bunch is an interesting example of, it's a games platform, but they've enabled the social aspect of it. They've invited it to be essentially a social platform that has games inside of it. I think what's really interesting about them is that their stickiness is way above the benchmark that we had said. It's just a little bit over 21%.
Wow.
And that's kind of worth acknowledging. It has become a place where people hang out on purpose, right? And so that's a very, very promising for this space of asynchronous games can benefit from this. So what can we learn from this? Well, when you're dealing with a game that is primarily asynchronous but increasingly social, video chat, voice chat, basically, you know, if you ever been like, hey, I'm gonna hang out and play with my friends, and we're all gonna hop on a Zoom call or video call of any kind, and then we're gonna hop into the game. That's what this looks like, right? That's what these games are like. But that actually kind of highlights one of the challenges to enabling this. Like if you wanna the game that you're creating to be the preferred mode of communication, you should acknowledge friends or family probably already know each other. If this kind of emulates board game night with your friends, you already know these people, so you're more than likely to get into a call with them first and then hop into the game. But if you've ever had to organize that, it is madness, right? This, like, no, that's the wrong link. I can't get into the call. It's chaos.
Right.
And when we talk about like the mechanics of it, deep links, distributed links are actually a really good way to do it. If as a game developer you enable people to enter your multiplayer room through a simple link, then you've essentially skipped that step. When you say your Google Hangouts meeting link, instead send the game link, and then you can get everybody into the room, that you can bypass that.
Making sure you give them tools to interact as well within that, using voice and video.
Exactly. Yeah. And by enabling that, by enabling everybody to hang out within the game, then that opens up the door to these other opportunities that we were talking about. Elevate the fun factor, enable privacy features, and the like. And then, of course, as we're talking about with Magic, less social scenarios are unlikely to benefit from voice and video chat, just because why would you want to talk to a random stranger that you're going to be done within 15 minutes? You don't, probably not, and you shouldn't force it. That would be bad for your player base, and it would be not the best use of the development resources. But when we're talking about tournament play, high-level play, then I think that the argument for why you might enable something like this starts to rise. It's the integrity of the competition. It is the drama of seeing the faces. So those are some interesting opportunities in the asynchronous game space. Anything more you'd add here, Pam, before we move forward?
No, I think that's it. Covered it all. Cool. Thank you.
All right. So let's go to the other side of the spectrum. Here we got synchronous games, and this covers a very broad spectrum of games. Everything from League of Legends to Bloons. I love Bloons. Bloons is great. So what we mean by this is, and this is a big bucket. Like if we really had, a 5-hour webinar, we could sit here and break this down into all of the variations. But we don't, so we won't. Just real-time player versus player or team-based player versus environment, where all players have to remain within the game, and the game is taking place simultaneously until its conclusion, at which point we can all get up and leave. And this can cover anything from Fortnite, League of Legends, Bloons, Clash Royale, Brawl Stars, and this game, Silly Royale, which is another social deduction game, very similar to if you ever played The Resistance or Among Us. All of these would classify synchronous games. We all kind of have to be there. If everybody leaves, well, it falls apart with different degrees of if everybody leaves. Right? So I think what we can highlight about these games is that I don't know, something I was kind of musing about with some of our peers at work is I would bet money that nobody in the history of even like online Halo gameplay has ever said, I really wish I could see my opponent's face. Like that.
No.
Like that would be an odd thing to say, right? We can also see that historically games have trended down from UI. Like UI has become increasingly minimalistic. Like you want all that real estate on your screen to be about the game, right? The game and the team collaboration and stuff and such. So I don't know. Do you play any of these games or games that fit within this space?
I'm trying to think. Not really. I mean, the only one probably would be Star Wars, but that's more.
It's more into the simulation category.
It goes into the next simulation category. Yes, I've never really played any of the asynchronous games. So yeah.
So I think that this is kind of my jam. This is my space. Like first of all, I love to play Bloons with friends. We'll hop on a call. We'll get on Bloons and just suddenly it's been 5 hours. It's a fun, silly thing. But I used to play quite a bit of League of Legends. I love social deduction games. All social deduction games are super fun for me.
Yeah.
And I think what I would say about these games is it is really just about the clear communications. Like, when we're hanging out like this, and probably even people in the audience, we're just disembodied voices all talking to each other on the same plane of existence. My dogs may bark in the background here in a minute, and you'll be able to hear that. It is confusing, and especially when as things become increasingly high stakes, and stakes in a game can vary in drama, but really valuing those clear communications really matters. So I would probably not suggest that somebody necessarily puts like silly voice filters in any one of these games and the like, right?
No, but something like noise suppression probably would work quite well, wouldn't it? Or
exactly.
spatial audio. To that extent,
the noise suppression, spatial audio would be quite valuable. It really is unfortunate that it's not something you can demo in a webinar. But for anybody listening, I would really encourage you to seek out like a spatial audio demo, spatial headphones, and listen to a conversation. It is, to me at least, the first time I got to do it, I felt it was quite profound. You can really actually focus your attention on different people. It feels a little bit more like being in a room, people talking over to each other, but you can still kind of lean in and say, hey, what are you specifically saying? Versus, and it's even happened during the course of this call, we'll talk over each other and be like, oh, wait, you go. Because everything is mixed in this weird space, right? Something worth acknowledging, there are plenty of applications out there like Discord that people already use for these kinds of games. So I think it really depends on what you are doing within the game, and when would a developer consider including RTE solutions. So let's look at an example here. Silly Royale, I think, is a great example that we can look at for when it makes sense to put these kinds of communications within the game. And it is because Silly Royale has variations of social deduction games and party games and just general hangouts. It is core to the game loop that people can talk to each other. So you would want that to enable it. They were actually quite successful. After they added voice chat, their session length increased by 300%, which is one of those outlandish things that as a product manager, you want to be like, we did the thing,
Yeah.
Like, that's the story you want to come back and tell your team, 300% increase. And here's what I found actually quite interesting about this. Their stickiness today, I checked this last night, so this is just from this last month, right around 11%, which puts them in the range of solid stickiness. Now, with the increased retention of 300%, that actually took them to this space. And then, as we mentioned, as people are able to come back to the game and hang out more and more, they build relationships within it, and then that enables the various monetization opportunities that might be within the game itself, right? So I think that this is an excellent example. But of course, if we're talking about, I don't know, League of Legends, for a long time, League of Legends didn't have voice chat. I think it was quite comfortable to be like, oh, we'll just hang out on Discord. And yet, eventually, you want to enable people to just be able to hop in a game, take the risk at speaking to a stranger. There's, of course, all kinds of roadblocks so that you don't end up in a terrible conversation and the like, right? So it highlights different ways in which, as a developer begins to invest more and more in cultivating the community within the game, it is worth exploring these opportunities. And I do fully acknowledge that, at least early on for like a MOBA or something of the like, it might, that might not be where you want to put this. But as you go along, you care. So some challenges and opportunities that are worth acknowledging as you might consider putting real-time engagement solutions inside of these games or not. One is clear voice communication is critical to success, like we were saying. Probably don't put video in a high-stakes competitive game. It wouldn't benefit the game, and you want to make sure that your game works first before you do anything else. AI noise canceling through spatial audio, these are technologies that are transitioning right now from vanguard to relatively well established. And as we're engaging in this transition, I think I will be this the norm of what we can see in here, right? Second thing worth acknowledging, if you've ever watched like high-level MOBA play, the players always drop messages to each other in the chat like, oh, I just dropped a ward here, just be aware. And that helps because, for example, wards will go away after like a minute or so, depending on the game. And it's good to be able to see the time code and be like, oh, that's probably dead now, I shouldn't go in that bush or whatever. it's good to also enable text chat. Like as we were saying, like text chat is part of the real-time engagement aspect of this, and you kind of want to give your players all the options that they can to be able to communicate. It's all about clear communication. Sometimes it's better to talk. Sometimes it's better to leave a message because you want to have like a record of stuff that's going on. It matters.
Yeah.
And then we should also acknowledge.
Sometimes it's about inclusivity as well, because some people may not be as articulate when they're speaking, but giving them the opportunity to text actually gives them the opportunity to express themselves perhaps a bit better than.
That's actually a really good point, as well, especially if you're with people that you don't truly know all that well, you're not quite so comfortable. Simply typing might be best for you. You know, you may not want to expose yourself to any kind of negative discussions that you would run into, right? And so, yeah, absolutely, especially because again, silly voice filters are probably not the best way to enable clear communication. So you do want to allow people to communicate as they want. Which also leads to sometimes we don't want to interrupt each other. Sometimes you don't have time to type. You're playing the game. You know, what are you gonna do? So it's really good to enable reactions. Those are pretty commonplace these days, just like a like or a heart. Or, you know, each game would have different utility for the kinds of reactions to texts or even emotes within the game. That would be a fantastic way to enable communications. And, you know, all of those are within the realms of real-time engagement solutions that you can put into these kinds of games. Bonus slide. Okay, so as we were preparing for this, something that we weren't entirely sure how to include in the discussion is like streaming. So we decided to focus this entire conversation around things that happen within the game, right? But we did want to acknowledge, especially for this space of synchronous games, there's a huge industry around broadcasting. You know, Twitch exists, etc. And of course, Twitch is like the de facto streaming platform. Then, you know, YouTube has started to gain prominence over the years. And I wanted to highlight Wizzo. Wizzo is from India. It's by a company called NBC Group. And they actually have a social application that recently has started to allow the broadcasting of game streaming and the like. And that has actually increased their new user growth. So do want to highlight, like within the gaming space, the potential for live streaming games into different platforms is very important. And from that, there are other real-time engagement opportunities that are worth acknowledging. But there's not much to linger on here. I just kind of did want to acknowledge that so that we recognize that there's the in-game experience and the out-of-game experience. And as game developers, we should always be considering, well, what's the game loop, what's the meta game loop, and then what's the meta social loop going around this whole thing, right? And those are things we should care about. Moving forward, I don't know, make sure we don't run out of time. This quite the hangout. Finally, real-time simulations. As we're coming up here, what do we mean by that? It is just virtual worlds. You can meet, work, play, show up, and socialize in real time in simulated scenarios. And I guess I'll just highlight the elephant. Here we start bumping up on the difference between, you know, what has historically been MMOs and other similar like online game experiences, and what the industry today is calling like metaverses and the like. I think that these are very similar. As we get further along, we'll find a separation. But the way that real-time engagement solutions play into these two spaces is quite similar. So it's worth, for the sake of being concise, lumping these together. You know, I've actually, as a more the way that I am a social creature is quite different. I've never been hugely an MMO player, but I have really enjoyed hanging out just with people in virtual space. What about you, Pat? Like, where do you?
Well, I love World of Warcraft. I've been playing it for about 15 years now. So, and for me, I started playing it at a strange time in my life. So I'm not going to give a sob story, but it actually helped me because I made a load of friends through World of Warcraft. That social side of it. And actually, you know, working together in raids and all the rest of it, I've made some really great friends. And, you know, when I tell people that I play World of Warcraft, a lot of people look at me almost as if to say, well, you're too old to do that. But actually, the average age of the people I play with in my guild is above 40. We have some younglings we look after, but it's a very nurturing environment. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They don't see that side of it. So I'm part of a community, part of a bigger community. and I've made lots of friends from all over Europe just from playing World of Warcraft for so long. And I think the great thing from Blizzard's point of view is that they're continually evolving the game, so they're adding in extra functionalities and all the rest of it. So that actually, for me, that whole world concept is so engaging. I just love it. So, and I do play things like I said, Star Wars as well, but that for me doesn't have the same feel that World of Warcraft has. It's much more immersive. I play mainly PvE, and sometimes I will just spend a couple of hours just walking around a forest, looking at the forest, because it is so real. Okay, it's not quite metaverse type yet, but it will get there. And I really look forward to the day I can actually stand in that forest and look around full 360 and hear the sounds full 360 as well, which I'm sure will happen one day.
Yeah, that would be very cool and very fun. I've been something I speaking of live streaming. I've been spending quite a bit of time watching people play in NoPixel, which is a GTA online server where people just hang out and role play. It's really odd, like and super fun. But people will play role play crazy characters. It is just the base GTA game, but they've turned it into this. You must be role playing to hang out in here, and people get into all kinds of silly adventures.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, what kinds of adventures do you get into with your crew in WoW?
Sometimes we'll just go, and because I'm on the Horde side, so what we can do is we'll go and raid an Alliance city and go and kill the NPC who is the Alliance leader, and you get reputation for doing that. And there'll probably be about 200 of us just going to invade the city, basically. And it's just a whole thing of understanding the tactics and having a lot of fun. It doesn't matter how many times you die or if you actually succeed or not. It's actually taking part and just doing something a bit crazy and a bit different. So that's kind of what I really enjoy about it, because you never quite know what's going to happen. Or you might get talking to somebody in another guild, for instance, and just have a really great time chatting to one another. So it's all about, it's really about that social side of things as well. And the role playing comes into it as well. If you want to be, I don't know, a dwarf rogue, you can play the part of a dwarf rogue, or you can be I'm not even sure there's such a thing as a dwarf rogue, thinking about it. I'll probably get caught out on that. But, I play blood elves because I love elves, basically. So I've always enjoyed being a blood elf, so, and there are the people that enjoy being ogres, orcs, trolls, whatever they want to be. And it allows people to actually be what they're not in real life, in a way, if you know what I mean. It allows them to project their personality into something else and not be afraid to do it. So I think that's a great thing about playing games like that. It just allows you to come out of yourself. And for me, it's all about relaxation as well. At the end of the day, after a really long, hard day, I just love sitting down and immersing myself in that world. And, I'm quite happy to pay for extra expansions. I'm quite happy to pay extra for a mount or to go and buy gold from the Blizzard store, Battle.net. So I'll actually pay hard cash to get in-game money to go and buy a flying mount that I really like the look of. And I'm not alone in doing that. So there's the monetization side of it. It's actually that stickiness and all the rest of it. So yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting that you talk about, like, as you call it, the younglings that come along to hang out. One of the reasons why I wanted to put Roblox on here is that we're coming up on teenagers that grew up playing Roblox. And just like, for the previous generation of millennials and centennials, is the digital natives who grew up on this sort of like 2D internet. We are experts at filling up forms and lists online, basically, on screens. The Roblox is kind of, Minecraft too, kind of highlighting people that learn to socialize in 3D virtual spaces. And so similar to World of Warcraft, which was even before that. And even, you can take this all the way back to MUDs, way back, people just hanging out online and like role playing and hanging out together in, at least within people's minds, was a simulated virtual space. Go left, go right, go forward. That's way more than you can do when you're just scrolling up and down on a the screen, right? And so this has been coming for a very long time. People hanging out in 3D virtual spaces and actually having a sense of space. I think, I don't know, people that grew up playing Roblox, I think that'll be something to watch for if for anybody out there that's interested in like, how is user experience going to evolve? What is it going to be like to interact with the internet? And so I think that brings us to the higher level of this. The Decentraland, the Sandbox, and any developer out there that's saying, yeah, we're building out a metaverse, or we're going to be part of the metaverse, whether you want to call it a metaverse or the metaverse. Ultimately, what they're saying is 3D spaces. What is it like to exist in 3D? And of course, it looks a lot like a video game, although it doesn't necessarily have to. What it really highlights is we are interacting with each other with 6 degrees of freedom all around, right? And on that note, I wanted to highlight, I think that the last kind of like highlight that we'll do of just like these rising developers that are building up interesting things is Party On. Party On has kind of taken this, a lot of what these experiences that you're highlighting, or similar adjacent to it, and kind of built this, what is functionally a virtual music event, karaoke hangout. You can do a small karaoke hangout or a large concert, like coffee shop concert, and they've put it together. And one of their big concerns is, well, it has to be super real time. The voice gets out of sync with the music. That's actually an excellent use case to highlight what it's like to build up immersion. And the immersion to do with the photorealism of the avatars or of the full interactions that you can have, but it's really just about the fact that I'm here, I'm hanging out with people, we're all enjoying music together, and that music feels like it's truly here. They're achieving time delay of less than 50 milliseconds, which, if you're out there playing, a high skill FPS or mobile, you're like, yeah, man, that's the move. That's what we want. This is just for a hangout. Like, that's where the industry is going, right? Like, we're on like a latency arms race to try to build out these experiences, even for the most casual users. So I realize we're coming up on time, so we'll move on to challenges and opportunities here. First of all, is if you're developing a real-time simulation space, one of the things you kind of have to account for is like, well, what is the context of this? Am I talking to you, Pat, or are we in the group? Or am I just kind of talking to the world and allowing myself to just be a part of it, even if I don't know these people? Or am I engaging in a contextual conversation, and it would be better if everybody else couldn't interrupt us? I am buying a thing, And so that's something to consider as you're building out your chat solutions, or even your voice chat solutions, that we can target these things accordingly. That's super important. There are also barriers for immersion. I love hearing you talk about role playing, because ultimately, voice filters. I think, to come back to voice filters, this is another excellent space where voice filters can be huge, because you can role play as that org. Right? Do you guys use voice filters, by the way, when you hang out?
Not in a while, no, not yet. No.
It's starting to become more ubiquitous. I keep running into friends or acquaintances who have just acquired extra Y software that allows them to change their voice, and it's always silly fun. I love it. And I think something that we're seeing is enable 3D spatial audio. Like, I think that the wisdom that I can impart about that when I first kind of thought of this, I was like, oh my god, that's incredible. Was that like in the real world, that's just how it works. You can't hear things in 3D spatial audio. That's just it. It's more human to hear it. So even if we're in like the equivalent of a video conferencing call, it just feels better. It feels more like you're actually hanging out with people. And
I think people forget about attenuation as well, don't they? Because I think about surround sound, it's actually, you've also got to feel as if somebody's walking towards you, you can hear the voice getting louder as they're coming towards you, and then dying off as they go away as well. So I think it's a combination of all those different audio of technologies. But definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is, if the purpose of this simulation is to create an immersive space, reducing barriers to immersion would in turn help people be there longer, hang out there longer. I have found that it is less exhausting to be in a video call if it's enabled in 3D spatial audio rather than just I don't know.
It is much better.
And then as we move into the future, the standards set by MMOs and similar things from way back to today, because role players have always been bringing their own content to the place, basically, even if it's in their imaginations. We start to think about, well, what does user-generated content actually look like? You know, I think something that's worth thinking about is, I know it's really easy to look out there and be like, all these metaverse developers, like, compared to modern day video games, like, why can't they get up to snuff? And it's because they're dealing with a problem of scale that's so much larger. You know, the development resources go into a lot of establishing quite a bit more flexibility. When you look under the hood of a lot of games, you're like, wow, I can't believe this thing actually runs. Like, it's all built somewhat, I don't want to say precariously necessarily, but like it only works for that game, right? And I think that a lot of these developers, what they're trying to do is establish standards to enable user-generated content. So how do you manage that? So I just wanted to highlight some concerns that if that's this kind of thing that you're looking to develop, what might you do? One is you want to define the standards for your virtual worlds. What is it for? When people bring content in or try to take it out, you can't take, even in the real world, you can't take everything everywhere. So what are the things that you should be able to bring inside and take outside, and define those and be clear about those, right? So that you can design accordingly. Understand that people want to stream content into and out of. Watch parties is an interesting use case that keeps coming up. Like people want to hang out and watch Netflix together in a virtual place, on a virtual TV kind of thing. And moderation technologies. I think that's an interesting space of, depending on your audience, like, is this meant for kids? Is it not? Like, depending on your region, are you going to be liable for this or that? It's thankfully something that now is like less human oriented and more AI oriented, where we can teach models to moderate for us, and that helps. And the key takeaway I'd like to leave out, going back to cross-platform ubiquity, is that a lot of these business models, whether you're working on asynchronous games or all the way up to these real-time simulations, a critical mass of users to create like a gaming community that is self-sustaining is very important. And a pattern that we see a lot in our research is cross-platform accessibility matters. I should be able to play from my PC to a VR headset to a mobile device to a browser, and all these people should be able to hang out together. And especially in simulations, that's going to be super important. Which means, you know, I'm not a UX designer, and so I recognize that it's easier to say than to do. But asymmetrical user experience, I believe, are something that are going to start coming up a lot. Like the phone user can't just be controlling things the same way that as a PC user, right? So we might need to kind of look into what it's like for these two people to exist in the same virtual space, even though they have a different device and interface to interact with. So that's the takeaways that we would get from there. Quick recap over here, you know, for asynchronous games, prioritize the fun factor, enable privacy, and acknowledge tension of high-level play. There are some opportunities there absolutely worth acknowledging. For synchronous games, it's all about clear team dialogue. That's what you should be prioritizing. You know, frivolous items would probably be very specific to the gaming community, but you know, as a blanket statement, it's all about clear team dialogue and nonverbal communications. And when we talk about simulations, you want to prioritize that contextual communications are something people can do. Research and invest in immersive technologies that can help that immersion naturally take place. Investigate the user-generated content standards that will be relevant to your platform. And then, of course, invest in seamless cross-platform. That is, as we saw earlier on, that if you hear a lot of buzz about the revenue that comes in the gaming industry, acknowledge that a lot of it is coming from mobile devices that are themselves not going to be equipped for like the single most immersive experience. So what does that look like? You know, what does it look like to be part of that community, even though you don't have the craziest, latest VR headset, right? That's it.
Sure. Thank you.